Welcome to She Sells Radio. My guest today is passionate and on fire about her mission, and I'm so inspired by it, and I know you will be as well. So my guest is Cherilynn Castleman. She has over 30 years experience as a Fortune 500 global sales executive, and her mission is to see 1 million women of color sit at the table of their dreams by 2030. And that table means the C-suite, sales leadership, the sales leaderboard, or the entrepreneur's table, which I love. And she's helping to overcome the problems these women often face of access and financial fluency to get there. So today we're going to dive into her mission, how you can get involved, how you can help support it, as well as just one of the many areas of her subject matter expertise, which is how to have the confidence to sell into the C-suite and how to carry those conversations powerfully and with authority. So I'm so excited to dive in. Cherilynn, welcome to She Sells Radio. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you, Elise. I am thrilled to be here.
Oh my gosh. I'm so inspired by what you're doing. And you and I were talking a bit in the pre-chat about your vision and your mission of helping 1 million women by 2030, 1 million women of color get the seat that they want. And we're like, yeah, it's a big mission. And you're going to do it. I can just feel with your energy and with your enthusiasm, and it's so needed too. So before we get into any of it, I just want to say thank you for what you're doing and for the work you're doing. I want to talk more about kind of what that looks like and just more about your mission. But before that, I want to hear a little bit of the backstory. So you shared that you've been in sales since before Girl Scout cookies were 50 cents a box. It brought me back to my Girl Scout cookie days. I was like, I think they were, I don't know, maybe $1, a couple dollars when I was doing it. But how did you get started in sales? Tell us a bit about your backstory there.
Absolutely. I've always just liked talking to people. And I know that we lived in a small town and they were starting a Girl Scout troop and they didn't have a leader. And I was 5. And at that time, I think you had to be 7 or 8. And they said, my mom said, well, if you let my daughter be in the troop, she would be the troop leader. And so I became a Girl Scout very, very young, and everybody sold cookies back then, and they gave them to you and put them in your wagon. And I thought it was the coolest thing to go down the street and just knock on doors and say, do you want to buy Girl Scout cookies? And they would say yes. And then I would say, but they freeze well and they make great gifts, and buy some more for Christmas. And I just sold, and my brother would come with me and just stand there bored, but I just would sell and upsell and upsell. And I thought it was the coolest thing. And it's all I've ever been doing. And I do remember about 3 years ago, I was reading an article, and I have to ask you, Elise, we've had 1,800 CEOs of Fortune 500, 1,800. How many before this year were Black women out of 1,800?
Oh gosh,
65 years.
I can only imagine how dismally small the number is.
Give me a number.
Don't even, out of 1,800.
Yeah.
I'm certain it was less than 50 to 30. I don't know. One.
There was one Black female CEO of a Fortune 500 company, Ursula Burns, 2009 to 2016.
Which company? Just out of curiosity.
Xerox.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Ursula Burns was the CEO of Xerox.
Okay.
So when she stepped down, Fortune magazine asked her, why aren't there more women in the C-suite? And she said, because marketing won't get you there. The arts won't get you there. Communications won't get there. Women have to learn to be close to the juice. And she went on to explain that the juice is product and money. We have to learn how to own a P&L. We have to learn what financial fluency is. We have to understand how the C-suite thinks. And so I decided that that is just sales. And so I set my mission to coach and train Black and brown women to be too good to be true. Now, I work with women, all women. I work with sales leaders, even men, because if we can bring another seat to the table, we can bring another woman to the table. Yeah. And so I challenge all of my listeners and everybody that I connect with. So it's, I've conquered my fair share of challenges, and this one doesn't scare me. And so I know what it's like to be the only in the room. And so my goal is to get women so that they're too good to be ignored, whatever table they want to sit at.
Wow. Gosh. I know, Cynthia Barnes,
Mhm.
just had her back on the show for a second interview. She had done one of the very, very early interviews of the show. And we were talking about how she is now the first, I think I'm going to get this right. Correct me if I'm wrong, the first Black female to keynote a national sales conference, like ever. And it blew my mind that had not happened up until this point. And it's just, sometimes we get so in the weeds with just the data. It's like you don't step back to look at the numbers and look at what's going on. So I so appreciate you sharing that. And I would love to hear a little bit more of your experiences coming up. When we have women on this show, we do talk about, we're very solution focused. So I know that's a big piece of how you operate too. But I think it's sometimes helpful for context for people to hear, like, what is it like to be the only one if they haven't had that experience, or what were some of the biggest challenges you faced? So on that journey from Girl Scout troop leader, which I love because you were already breaking the mold, right? Because they're like, you got to be 7 and you somehow did it at 5. So clearly you can see the early dedication to, we're going to change things up. What was that journey into more professional sales like for you? And what were some of the experiences that most defined this mission that you're now on?
So I think that my experience actually hasn't changed much for a lot of women. There was a recent study put out, and I'll share the link with you and you can share it with your audience. But 37% of women in leadership are saying they're leaving organizations because of microaggressions. And so microaggressions is bullying, prejudice, unconscious bias, somebody else taking credit for your work. I mean, that's over a third of women leaders saying, I can't do this anymore. And so, yes, I know what it's like to walk through a hotel in an expensive suit, but if I didn't have my suitcase with me, somebody's going to ask me to get their bath towels. I know what it's like to go into a boardroom where I'm leading an RFP pitch and there are 23 people in the room, and I'm the only person of color and the only woman, and it's my meeting and I'm leading the meeting, and somebody asked me to get coffee. Wow. So, this hasn't changed for a lot of women. And so I talk a little bit about being an upstander instead of a bystander, stepping in. Kim Scott has this great book about just work, and she talks about the difference between upstanders and bystanders, and that we can stand up for each other. And I challenge people to do that. You're going to lose top performers because you don't stand up for them.
Which I know is a key piece of what you do with organizations, right? Is really helping them. And I'll let you speak to it too, but my understanding is, how do you attract, draw in, and then retain more of that top tier talent? So what are some of obviously there are things I will never understand. I understand the being a woman piece, but I don't understand what it's like as a woman of color. And so what are some of the primary, I guess, challenges? I want to speak a bit about the access piece. Seems relatively obvious, but maybe we can speak a little bit more to that, as well as maybe you mentioned in your bio, the financial fluency piece that you see as some of the biggest challenges for these women to get into the roles that they really desire. Speak a little bit more to that, and how you would advise a woman to navigate some of those challenges if she's facing them.
So I think one of the things that we've discovered is you have to connect with your clients. You have to immerse yourself in your client's world. And one of the best things that I encourage people to do, and I think it's the most important document that most salespeople never read, is learn how to read a 10K. It's go in to the website of the publicly traded company. And if you're working with a company that's not publicly traded, go look up their competitor. You will learn so much about the industry. So read 10Ks, learn how to read the value statement, Value Line. Value Line is an independent company that has analysts that looks at every industry every quarter. You can go in and read what's going on with that industry. They do a quarterly analysis of all the major publicly traded companies. Read that. And so get in the habit of finding out what are the trends for the industry you either work in or the industry that your clients are in. Get comfortable reading a 10K. I have a link to a blog that's, the most important document most of us never read.
I've never
Learn to
even
read.
heard of it. Is that like a 10,000-foot overview, or is
No, so
that?
a 10K is the annual report that companies file with the Security and Exchange Commission.
Got it. See,
And
that's like,
so
I didn't even
it
know.
is,
Yeah.
it is, and it's so critical because if you want to know how they're handling the headwinds, how they're dealing with the tailwinds, if you want to know how the economy had impacted them or what they did for the pandemic, all of that information's in there. And so it's a 200-page document. It can be intimidating, but I teach people how to read it in about 15, 20 minutes. And if once a quarter you read your major clients' 10K, or if you work for a publicly traded company, read your own, read your company's. Number two, learn how to read analyst reports and see what's going on with the industry, so that you know the industry trends. And if you read your industry trend every quarter and you read Value Line, you'll get that. So number one, immerse yourself in your customer's world. Number two, do good discovery calls. And I tell people to use the 4 Fs. And the 4 S is first, finest, failure, future. And I ask you, ask anybody, what was it like the first day back from the pandemic? What was it like the first day of this quarter moving into recessionary times? Every client has a first. Ask them about it. What was it like your first day in this new role? Just get in the habit of talking to people about their experience and let people tell you their story. Number two, everybody's doing something well. So I say the next question is your finest. What are you getting right moving into the coming out of the pandemic? What are you getting right as we go into the new year? What did you get right as we're wrapping up Q4? I don't care if it's the end of the quarter, beginning of the quarter, whatever's going on, ask them what are they doing well. That's finest. The third F is failure. And the positive way to say that is to say, okay, Elise, I'm sorry, what do you wish you could do better? We all could wish we could do something better. So I will say, Elise, what was it like your first day back in the office after the pandemic? What are you getting right since the pandemic? And what do you wish you could have gotten better? And the fourth question is future. What does your future look like? If it is now March 2024, what would it look like? And so if you do a good discovery interview with clients or just even current clients or prospects, you'll get an understanding about what's important to them. You've immersed yourself in it. And Salesforce's recent State of the Union, State of Sales report says that 87% of buyers want sellers to be trusted advisors. 87. That's the majority of buyers say, I want my salesperson to be a trusted advisor. The only way you can do that is know what's going on in their world, know what's going on in their industry, and ask better questions.
The 4 Fs. Okay. I love that. It's simple. It's easy to remember. It makes sense. Now, here's what I'm curious about.
Okay.
So is that for that C-level discovery call? Because I know today we're going to talk specific. So
yes.
That works for the C-suite.
Yes, it works. Yeah, it works because, and people will say, so I met with the president of a top health insurance company, and we had a multi-million-dollar deal that we were working on with them. I was head of client success, and I still remember, our president had me prepare this massive pitch deck and wanted me to go in and pitch him, and I just walked in and I turned the pitch deck over and I was just like, so what was it like the first time you started dealing with the solution? And he was like, oh gosh, Cherilynn, nobody has ever asked me that. It was horrific. It was this. And I said, okay, so what are you getting right? What are you doing well? What is your finest? And what do you struggle with? What do you wish you could do better? And he goes, I wish the rest of my presidents understood this. He goes, we just don't understand it. And I said, what would the future look like? And he said, the future would be great if we could have a conversation amongst ourselves that we really understood what was going on. And I was like, okay. And I brought subject matter experts out. We trained, we helped them understand it, and then increase their spend by several millions of dollars just by asking those questions. Wow. So it doesn't matter what role they're in the C-suite, they have a vision. Ask them about their vision. Some things are getting right, some things they're not. You can help them get closer to their goals.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, backing it up even a bit before that, getting the conversation. right, landing the conversation. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on that. I'm assuming part of it is just the education pieces you talked about, being able to talk the talk, but how do you, for someone who's maybe using Sales Navigator, or it's like they're trying to break into these key accounts,
Right.
what are some of the things that you use as maybe like secret weapons, or what's your secret sauce if you want to get in on an account and even
Yeah.
have that conversation in the first place?
So again, you want to position yourself as a trusted advisor. And I
Mm,
think it's three things. So first of all, post industry articles. It's really easy to set up a Google alert. It's really easy to read your industry publications and platforms, and just post, oh, I read this. This I thought architects would be interested in because I sell to architects. So
mm,
every week, post something with your point of view. Say, I read this. This is really cool. And I tell people, pick 3 topics that you post on regularly, so you're seen as a subject matter expert. 2 of them can be related to your work, and 1 can be personal if you want. I post
mm,
on parenting and being a working mom. I post on diversity, equity, inclusion, and I post on women sitting at the table of their dreams, women achieving in
mm,
sales, women achieving in business. But I also post on what it's like to be a working mom and have your daughter by your desk while you're working.
yeah.
But those are the things. So post, do personal posts, share what you're doing and what you're doing to help your clients.
Mm,
And the third thing I say is post about your superpowers. Every
mm,
one of us has superpowers. Take your 3 superpowers and leverage those. Talk about why you're innovative. Talk about why you're a good listener. Talk about why you build great skills or great relationships. Your clients care about that. They want to work with somebody who is a person. And so I talk about that I'm an empathetic listener, that I build relationships, and that I want to help people. That's one of my superpowers. That's what my mission is about.
mm,
Clients contact me because I post about sales, I post about influencing, I post about selling into the C-suite. I also post about how hard it is to post on social media, because that's something I
mm,
struggle with. And one
yeah.
of my superpowers is my commitment to growth.
Mm. How
So
do we, it's so funny. I was literally, before you even talked about that, I was going to ask you about your sales superpower. So we're on the same page. How do we get clear on what our superpowers are?
there's a couple ways. If you don't know what your superpower is, the first challenge I have for you, and I will always challenge people. Elise, one of my mentors, Bill Green, the former CEO of Accenture, said, Cherilynn, when you criticize people, you raise their defensiveness. But if you challenge people, you raise their game. So
Mm,
I'm going to challenge your listeners. And one of the things that I encourage people to do is something that's called the 100 list. Take a piece of paper, list it out to 100, and sit down and don't get up until you've listed everything that you have done in your life, every success. Start with that
mm,
double Dutch contest you won when you were 5 years old, and list everything out until you get to 100. And you're going to get about halfway through and you're going to be, there's nothing else. And I was like, don't move. Don't let yourself get up and get water, coffee, nothing. Just sit there. When you finish, if you go back and look at it, your superpowers will come up over and over again.
ah,
Okay.
mm,
That's one thing you can do. Another thing you can do is you can send an email to 5 or 6 people you've worked with and say, do me a favor, respond to this email and tell me what my 5 greatest strengths are, or
mm,
my 5 best attributes, and tell them, don't be shy, no right or wrong answer. I just would love to know what I do well. You're going to get back amazing emails from people telling you, oh, Elise, you do this well. Oh, and I love that you were so innovative. And then you'll see that theme and you will know what your superpower is.
got it. Got it. Ah, I love those exercises. The
So
other, yeah, go
go
ahead.
ahead. Nope, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so once you uncover those, and I love that exercise too, for one other thing, which I'll say as a side note, and then I want to ask a follow-up question. The confidence to put yourself out there and position yourself. And one of the things I work with my clients a lot on is worthiness. All of the clients in our community, and very likely many of our listeners as well, that can be one of the biggest challenges and stumbling blocks, is having this vision, having this goal, but we all have this story of unworthiness that's
Right.
not true, right? But it if we believe it, it'll run the show for us. So I'll have my clients go through and do like an end of day accomplishments list or an end of day just celebration list, because we do all these amazing things and we forget about them. Right. It's
Right.
just the way the brain works. We focus on what didn't go right. We focus on what we didn't accomplish. We focus on where we didn't measure up to somebody else on the leaderboard or a fellow entrepreneur that we're comparing ourselves to. So I love that exercise too, from the standpoint of it's going to give you some major mojo in your
Right.
confidence with this outrage, right?
Absolutely. And the other thing, at least along those lines, I tell people, start notes in your phone. And every
Yeah.
time you have a great accomplishment, add it there, because you're going to have days where people are going to tell you no. You're going to have days when you're just going to have failure after failure. And you're going to just say, you know what? I'm just not that good. And then you go into your list of all your wins, and you're like, wait a minute, I did this. I forgot I did this. And it's your it's your way to high five yourself, or you're at a girl. And so I just tell people, start one in your phone and just keep adding to it.
Oh, that's so good. The notes on my phone are like my whole life.
Right.
List after list of the most important. I think I have a list like that, but I haven't added to it a little bit. So that was a great reminder. I'm going to go in and update it as well. So you said something else that I thought was really interesting, Cherilynn. You said when you post, so part of basically getting the attention of these ideal customers is being positioned as a subject matter expert,
Right.
sharing the information that's going to be relevant to them, and then also being able to share about your superpowers. I can imagine for some of our listeners, they might say, how do I do that without sounding like it's ego or bragging? So how do you, when you talk about being an empathetic listener and you do a post on that, how do you position it in a way where it doesn't come across that way? I'm really curious because I know there's a way, but I want to hear how you do it.
Yeah, so the way I do it is I say there's 5 things that you can talk about. So you can say thank you. So you can say, thank you to Elise for having me on this week. It was really great to share my story about my mission. So thanking somebody, talking about somebody else's vulnerability. How I was coaching with this client and she was struggling with her self-limiting beliefs, and it was so cool to see her get past that and succeed. And so sharing about somebody else's vulnerability, sharing somebody else's mission. I've worked with other organizations, other networking, and companies, for example, companies that are committed to women and growth. And so if they recognize me, I don't just say, hi, I got to do this. I say a big thank you to this company, or I credit their mission. So you focus on somebody else's contribution, somebody else's mission or vision, somebody else's vulnerabilities is where somebody else grows. It's also okay to brag on your hard work. So it's also okay to say, wow, it's taking me 3 years to get my certification or my degree. And now because I have this, I'm really committed to doing X. So people will relate to your hard work. Yeah. So talk about your hard work, talk about your mission, give somebody else credit, thank somebody else, are big ways. And when in doubt, count the U's and count the I's. All of our posts and all of our emails should have twice as many yours, rather than I's. So, instead of saying, I'm excited about the holiday, or I'm excited about this new quarter, I would say, how are you prepping for the new quarter? Are you anxious because you're getting to the end of the quarter and you may not, and you're not, and you haven't finished strong?
Got it.
And then post.
Yeah.
Here's a great link for all you entrepreneurs out there. Not, I found this. And so write to your audience. I also encourage people to write to one person. Think of one person in the audience, in your network, that's important, and write to them. You don't have to put their name. I wouldn't say, Elise, this is for you. But if I saw an article that I thought you might like, I would write to you without using your name. Right. Because it makes it very personable. You don't have to try to sound like an expert. Just write to ordinary people. People like posts from real people.
Absolutely. And we can all think about what resonates with us as we scroll. it's a total difference between somebody doing a post that's completely formulaic and kind of corporate and sterile
Right.
feeling versus those things that really get you in the heart. And it's always something where you feel like they're talking to you
Yes.
specifically. So really, really, really good. I want
And
to, yeah,
one
please go
final
ahead.
thing, I
Yeah.
see you. My
Mm.
clients tell me every day, nobody sees them. My manager doesn't see me. I can be top of the
Wow.
leaderboard, nobody sees me. Tell somebody I see you.
Mm.
Hey, I saw you posted this. I see you. Oh, I see that you hit the leaderboard for the first time. Congratulations, I see you. Shout other people out on LinkedIn. Tell people I see you. And I see you, and I see the great job you're doing. I see you, and I see you moving forward. I see you running that company one day. I see you sitting in a C-suite one day. Help see people in a bigger vision.
Yes.
I love that, I did a podcast and somebody says, oh, I see you reaching 1 million women. That's where that came from. Somebody challenged me. So
Ah.
challenge people, see them on LinkedIn. That's another
Mm.
way to brag on people, share your message, and not make it just about you.
Yeah. Ah, and it's the bottom line principle in sales, right? It's just make it about the other person.
Right.
And sometimes I think we can have a lot of resistance around posting or social media because we think, oh, it feels egocentric, but it's not at all when you're positioning it that way.
Right.
So I love that you spoke about vision because that was the final kind of area I want to get your perspective on as we talk today, Cherilynn. So with the work you're doing, it is a big vision. It is an important mission. All of our listeners have some version or they feel that coming from within them. They may not be clear on what it is yet, but if they're not clear, they know there's something greater for their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And if they are clear on what it is, sometimes it can feel really daunting and really overwhelming. And there can be an element of who am I to do this? And the self-doubt creeps in, right? And maybe it can be different for everyone, right? For some, it's leading a social movement like you are. For others, it's I have a greater vision for my family life and for how I want us to be together. For others, it's I want to go to my first 6 figures or I want to go to 7 figures. So it's different for everyone. How do you manage the self-doubt that creeps in about your vision when it does?
So a couple things. So first of all, I have a morning routine.
Mm.
So I encourage people to have a morning routine, and your morning routine should include so my morning routine, I use an acronym for SWATch, which is because my great grandmother used to swatch little pieces of our summer clothes together to
Mm.
make quilts for our bed. And so my theory is that if I can have a perfect day, swatch together, I get a perfect week, swatch together, perfect month, and a perfect
Yeah.
year. And so in my morning, I sit until it quiets my brain. I hydrate. I have an attitude of gratitude. I say thank you for things in my life.
Yeah.
I spend time on a vision. And so I have what I call my perfect day vision. So imagine again, like it is 2024 and you're having your perfect day, and just see that. Just take a couple minutes and see your perfect day. The next thing I do is I write down the one thing that I'm going to get done today. Every day
Mm.
I have one thing that's going to move me in the direction of that vision.
Mhm.
Because how do you eat an elephant, Elise?
One
Bite at a time.
I
That's
just have
right.
to say really quick, I love that it's one thing. I love that it's just one
Yeah.
thing.
And there's a book out, and there's a whole movement now called Just One Thing. And so if you want to read more about it, there's a book called Just One
I
Thing.
haven't even heard of that. Okay,
But
I will.
write down the one thing that you're going to do today. So if every day you did one thing to move you in the direction of your vision, you got 365 things you have done over the course of a year. And you just keep seeing it and keep moving. So that's number one. Have a vision, have a morning routine where you figure out what your one thing is and what your vision is. Number two, I think it's critical to give your self-limiting belief a name. So I call mine Charlie. And a couple times a day, I check in and ask Charlie 2 questions. The first one is this true? Is the thought I'm having true? And the second one is this thought moving me in the direction of my vision and my goals? I don't beat up Charlie. I don't say you shouldn't be doing that. Don't do that. I just stop and I say, okay, is this true? And the second one is this moving me in the direction of my goals?
Hmm. And what if so let's assume the answer is no to one or both of those. So what do you do
Okay,
from
but
there?
just doing that raised my awareness, and you
Wow.
start becoming aware of what you're doing. And then the third thing I do is I just take my right hand and I just do this, and I speak to myself like I'm my best friend. So I call it my best friend tap. And so if I'm doing it and I go, oh, that's not, then I'll say, okay, if this was my best friend, I would say, Cherilynn, you've done hard things before. You've got this challenge. Now go get it. Okay. And
yeah.
so I check in, and I tell people, put a reminder on your phone. My phone will pop up and say Charlie 3 times a day. Okay. And when it does, I look at it and I go, okay, Charlie, what thoughts are you having? Are they true? Are they moving in the direction of your goals? And they are, I'm like, okay. And I keep working. If they're not, I go, you got this, Cherilynn. You've done things tough, hard things before. And then I just keep going. Because remember, that voice is your best friend. That's the voice that you hear when you walk into a dark garage late at night. That's the voice that you hear when you meet somebody and they make the hair on your arm stand up and you go, there's something about this person. And so remember that voice is your best friend. That voice is telling you these self-limiting things because it thinks it's protecting you.
I've never thought about it like, well, I maybe, but I haven't put two and two together like that. That's also your protector and your best friend. That's so interesting.
So that's why you want to name it. So give it a name and know that it's your friend. And so if you were checking in with your friend, so if your friend goes, you can't reach 1 million women, you wouldn't beat your friend up. So don't beat your voice up. Just say to them, hey, is this true? No, it's not my reality. My reality is I can do this. And is this thought moving me in the direction of my goals? No. And then I give myself just a good little, and for me, it's just like a little hug. It's just like, you got this, Cherilynn, move on. And I keep on going. And nobody else even picks up on it. They don't know that I'm not knocking some lint off or straightening my hair or something, but I do that 3 or 4 times a day. I check in with myself, and you just get more conscious. So
the other piece, I just want to highlight what you're doing there, and something I think is really unique, because we talk a ton about mindset on the show. But I don't know that I've ever had someone bring up the proactive piece of it. So I love that that's proactive. 3 times a day, you got the alarm going off on your phone, because otherwise the narrative will just run. And unless you're conscious enough to notice, it just keeps repeating, right? And it keeps reaffirming that old program. So that's a really interesting, different approach that no one has ever shared before on the show. And I like it.
Well, one of the things, and you know this, Elise, the only way you can have a new habit is anchor it with an old habit. So old habit, look at my phone. I've got clients who put their Charlie, the name, on their water bottle. Every time they reach for their water bottle. I have some that people drink coffee 3 times a day. They put it on their coffee pot. When they go to get a cup of coffee, they stop and they go, okay, what thoughts have I had? Are they true? And do I need to give myself an atta girl? And I always tell people, just talk to yourself the way you would your best friend. Because we would never say things to our best friend like we say to ourselves.
No, it's so true. And it is the biggest thing that I see shift a woman's results, or a man's, whoever's listening, shift the results, is it shifts your self-image, right? And your results will never supersede your self-image. So, okay, beautiful. So morning routine throughout the day, checking in, you've got the alarm. That feels very thorough. If there's anything else though that you do to help with the self-doubt, I want to give you space to speak to that.
Having a perfect day visualization. And I mean, it is exactly 1 year from today. And you close your eyes, and when they open, imagine that I've given you a realistic magic wand. What would your perfect day look like? And so take a minute and visualize that every day, and eventually it'll happen.
Wow. Oh, thank you for sharing that. Those are things that you've given us so much today, from the 4 F's to the 10K report. That was a new learning for me too, just getting the industry knowledge, to how you're positioning yourself in your social posting, to the very specific plan for reframing the thoughts that aren't helpful. So thank you so much for this, Cherilynn. I would love to have you share, how can our listeners connect? How can they get involved in the movement? I know you've got a great LinkedIn group as well that they can join. So please share next steps in getting in touch with you.
Absolutely. So the easiest way is connecting with me on LinkedIn. Just shoot me a DM me or connect with me, follow me. You can also find my resources at CherilynCastleman.com. I have a blog, The Most Important Document You've Never Read, that will talks about how to read a 10K. There's also a blog about the 4Fs and doing a great discovery interview. I'm also doing a whole live Cherilyn Presents this year. And so if you want to see me live or learn from me or join our movement, there's a link, 1 million, hashtag 1 million women by 2030. And so you can check out what we're doing or join the movement. Regardless of whether you're a woman of color or an ally, we would love to have you join.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you. We'll link all of those in the show notes. And I just want to say thank you again for coming on today, for sharing both something very inspirational and also very tangible tools that we can take with us to elevate our results. So grateful for you. And this was a really fun conversation. Thank you again.
Thank you, Elise. It's been absolutely my pleasure.
Amazing. Amazing. So to you, my listener, go connect with Cherilynn, get involved with her movement. It's the type of thing that it requires all of us, right? So getting involved, supporting, spreading the word amongst your network about what she's doing. It's very needed and it's very exciting. So thank you as always for being a listener of She Sells Radio, and I'll see you on our next episode. Bye for now.